Hello, welcome to episode 4 of this series. In this episode, I am going to talk about testing cascading parameters in Blazor. So, basically, cascading parameters allow you to pass data down multiple component levels without, explicitly passing through each component one by one. And in order for a component to receive like cascading parameters, you need to use this attribute called cascading parameter. And then whenever you want to test a component that has a cascading parameter, you need to wrap that component in a cascading value provider. Of course, we want to use DI or dependency injection as well. So you know that Blazor supports dependency injection through constructor injection or property injection for services that your components rely on. So in your tests, more often than not, you want to register mock implementations or fake versions or implementations and then use them inside of the services collection in your test context class. Remember, the test context is the base class that our test code files kind of derive from. So by providing fake implementations when we want to test components, we can write our tests in isolation, which is a very important concept, right? You want your tests to be isolated from their real dependencies. Now, in order to get to the example, I need to create a couple of code files in the client application. I have already created a new branch, as you can see here, episode 4, and I want to get started with creating some sample components and another class. So I am going to let's say create a folder. I'm going to call this probably context. And then here, I'm gonna, add a code file. This is gonna be a class called patient context. So this patient context is like, let's say, a service. We will probably refactor it in upcoming episodes as well. This is just, the first version. So patient context, as you can see, defines one single property of type string called user role. And I'm going to rename the file to patient context as well. And then I am going to, let's say, create a component. And I am going to call this component patient dashboard. So let me go ahead, create patient dashboard. And then I am going to, inject patient context. I am going to define the code block using cascading parameter, and then another private string called welcome message. Now the template. So this is a very simple component. Let me add the using statement. So this context is like a service, and I know that more often than not in real world applications we need to have interfaces for our services so that we can mock them correctly. I am going to, I told you, refactor the test code in future episodes, but the focus of this episode is on cascading parameters. So again, as I told you, cascading parameters allow you to kind of pass values down the component tree without setting those parameters, input parameters for each and every single component. So now, this component has this property called department. It's a cascading parameter, and then it has this single string variable as well, which is using string interpolation to get the value of user role from the context, and then the department, which is going to be passed to this component whenever this component is going to be used, and then it's going to construct this welcome message, and it's going to render this welcome message in this p tag. Now we want to write a test to test this component. So here I am going to create another code file. I'm going to call it patient dashboard test. Of course, it's going to use test context coming from bUnit. I'm going to remove the unused dependencies because I want to use my services collection. I need to add this namespace as well. Now I'm going to make this class public, and then I am going to write the first test. So the first test is going to test whether the component renders that welcome message when that service is injected into it. So let's render the component now using that cascading value. Again, using render component, the name of the component, and then the parameters. And then let's verify the markup of the component. Whether the component contains that p tag. And we're done. So the only thing that I need to change now is that I should use this type, and we're done. So let's see what's going on here, because it's a little bit it's a very, let's say, a little involved test. I have added some comments as well. So first off, I am registering an instance of my service, patient context, and I am setting the value for this property. In real world applications, more often than not, you have an interface for these services, right? And the values more often than not come from a database or a backend API and whatever. But in this case, because we wanted to keep things simple, I have registered the concrete type itself, and I have hard-coded the value of this user role property. So the user role has been set to doctor, and right now my DI container contains an instance of patient context, and as you remember, the patient context is going to be injected into this component. So this instance of the component that we are using here, right, is going to get an instance of this patient context registered in our DI container. So as before, I'm going to create an instance of patient dashboard, and then I am going to add that cascading parameter, which is called what was the name? Department, I think, right? The name of the cascading parameter is department. So I'm going to set the department to cardiology. So right now the component has been created. It has received an instance of the patient context service class with this value, and now I want to verify the markup. So the markup should contain the user role, which in this case is doctor, right? And then the department, which is cardiology. So department, the cardiology, comes from the cascading parameter inside of the component, which we are setting here. But the doctor, which is the user role, is coming from that service. So two things going on here, right? The service and the component itself. And then we are verifying the markup of the component. Again, in future episodes, I'm going to show you more involved scenarios. For example, having a service and then an interface, and then mocking that interface using mock-q or similar mocking libraries. And then we are going to control the behavior of those dependencies, and then we're going to test the components. But this is the first example, so it's a rather simple one. Let me run the test now to see if it is going to pass or not, and it passes. So we're good. And this is it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. If that's the case, as always, try to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.